Hey everybody, welcome back to the Badgerland Birding Podcast, bringing you birding news and stories from the Badger State and beyond. Today we had some news from the American Ornithological Society on some lumping and splitting of different species. Moment of silence for the hoary redpoll. That's a tough one.
Yep.
Lumped into now one species. I believe like three redpoll species. We're going to get into the whole thing
I
here
believe it was
in a
least
second.
red pole, hoary red pole, and common red pole are now just red pole.
Is it least or lesser?
Oh, it could be lesser. I think it
I
might
feel
be
like there's
lesser
a
actually, now that you
lesser.
say it. I never had the opportunity to see one of those. And I
Now
guess
you
now it
never
doesn't
will.
matter. That's true. Technically, sort of feels like it's extinct.
I guess in a way. All right, let me pull up the list here.
Before we go over the list, do you think that any of this is even relevant? It seems like it's kind of arbitrary, all this stuff.
You know, when you grow up, you're just like, this is a species, this is a species, and then once you're kind of living through it all getting changed, it feels so much less solid. Feels like things could change at any time.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
still stuff that's changed that I refer to by the old name. So like Gray Jay into Canada Jay, I still call them Gray Jays a lot.
I feel like it kind of can go either way on that one. One that I hear people say a lot is solitary vireo for blue-headed vireo.
I've
That
never heard
was
that name before.
some of the birders, over 50 will still call it solitary vireo. So there's
Why'd
still
they
some of
change
those
that
hanging
name?
around. I don't know. I'm not sure if it was a split or something like that, but that's what it used to be called. But one big surprise on this that we were actually saying was basically for sure, because I heard some stories, is that the herring gulls did not get split in this round. And it seemed like that was going to be a for sure thing with herring gull going to American herring gull and then, everything else. So that did not get passed in this proposal. But also keep in mind, this is just what the AOS says. So, like any other organization, you could just be like, no, we don't agree with that. And just
Is that something that
basically,
actually happens? Can you
yeah, there's
just
a bunch of these
decide?
different organizations. So you'll have like America doing a certain thing, and then Europe will do like a different thing. So just because one organization says doesn't mean they're all going to necessarily adopt it.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So
So
we
as
kind of abide by this, but you don't have to abide by this. You can just call them whatever you want.
I mean, you always could, I suppose. But, as far as trying to get everybody on board with a specific name or something, I feel like the AOS has some power to decide this. But yeah, other
So
things could
will
just be
things
like,
like
nah,
eBird sort of go along with whatever this
I
is? I'm
think
assuming
so.
then
Yeah.
eBird now will see, these changes occur.
Yeah. So I think most things will, but we'll see. So let's kind of go through some of this. This is just starts off with just saying things that passed and failed, but I think
Well, did you say, I think one of the things was they removed the hyphen from night heron for
yeah,
black crown and
there's
yellow crown
actually
night heron.
this is like just kind of the general things of what passed and failed, but there was like a little synopsis that I saw somebody post. Let me pull that up because I actually found that to be more useful than the actual document itself.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell what's happening in those documents because it just goes over scientific names and then it says what the change is. And I think a lot of times you don't even really think about where the hyphen is and things. So it's not really that big of a deal. I'm kind of annoyed with how many things that live all across the world get split because they're regionally, I guess, different. Like one good example was barn owl. There's now American barn owl, and we experienced this with northern goshawk turning into American goshawk. It just seems kind of stupid to me.
Okay, so here, this was an article by Michael Redder, who actually got to do a tour with in Texas in the Rio Grande, but it's by the ABA, so it's just basically going over what actually happened. So it says the most noteworthy changes for birders in the ABA area are the lump of common and hoary redpolls and a bunch of splits. So Corey shearwater, Audubon shearwater, brown booby, cattle egret, intermediate egret, lesser sandplover, barn owl, house wren, and American pipit. And then splits
Hmm.
of gulbilled tern, black-capped petrel, northern flicker, and northern wheat ear are all involved daughter species found further afield. So that's interesting.
Interesting. Do you see northern flicker in there too?
Yeah, it's not what you think. It's not the like eastern western though. It's something else. So
Right.
let's go through the red poles. All red poles are now one species, just known as red pole. That's weird. I feel like
That
I'm
is
always just
weird.
gonna call it a common red pole. Although sometimes we do
Yeah.
just say red pole. Like there were some red poles over there.
Yeah, and it's simple. It's easy. It's not much of a change, I guess. I was talking about this with you today, is I felt like there was an actual visual difference between Hori Red Pole and common Red Pole. There were features you could pick out, and when you saw a Hori Red Pole, you really knew it. Are they keeping the subspecies at all then?
I
It
don't
doesn't seem like it
know.
says one way or another.
I would assume it would have some distinction, but I'm not sure.
I would
So
assume as
it says
well.
it is common, hoary, and lesser are the ones
Lesser,
being lumped. It
okay.
says genetic work shows that red poles are almost completely undifferentiated except for a single chromosomal inversion that does not prevent interbreeding. The difference in size and melanin deposition seem to be clinical in a textbook example of Bergman's rule.
Yeah, I don't know what Bergman's rule is. You want me to look it up for you?
Yeah, look it up for me. Do a little research
Do a little
here.
do a little searchy
I mean,
search.
I feel like that's pretty valid though. If it's just one chromosome that's different and they all interbreed, that doesn't seem
However,
like
I
it
mean that's
really.
still a difference. That's still a chromosome
Yeah,
difference.
but
And
I
there's
mean, kind of
there's
the
tons of
rule is if
stuff that
they
interbreeds. Like look at ducks. Are you gonna lump every species of duck that can interbreed with a
maybe
mallard?
we should just have one called duck and then call it a day. But
Bergman's rule is an ecogeographical rule that states that within a broadly distributed taxonomic clade, populations and species of larger size are found in colder environments, while populations and species of smaller size are found in warmer regions. The rule derives from the relationship between size and linear dimensions, meaning that both height and volume will increase in colder environments. Bergman's rule only describes the overall size of animals, but does not include body proportions like Allen's rule does. That does not seem like it fits at all what they're
I feel
talking
like it's
about.
saying that because they live in different habitats, like you probably get smaller red poles in the warmer areas, and maybe that's involving lesser,
I feel
where
like the
like the
size
regular
was
ones are
never really that
bigger.
big of a deal,
Well, I don't know
though.
anything about lesser red pole. I don't know what that was talking about. Bill
I feel like
size definitely
this
played a role.
this doesn't seem like it's stating that those are different species, though. I mean, it seems like it's saying that that's why different species exist, not saying that that's why certain individuals of different species may look different.
Hey,
So I don't know here.
textbook,
I don't.
apparently.
I mean, I don't know anything about Bergman's rule, and this is just Wikipedia I'm looking at. But if my understanding of what I just read is correct, I feel like that's an invalid statement that they made in this.
I have no idea. Can't speak on Bergman's rule. But next up, there's the split of brown booby into brown booby and Coco's booby.
Ooh,
So
Coco's
it
booby.
says birders have long known that the brown boobies off Western North America look different compared to those elsewhere. Especially true for adults with white heads and bluish bare parts rather than brown heads and yellow bare parts. Females and immatures may tend toward adult males, but they're trickier to identify. And then it has something about ID tips. So Coco's booby is found in warm waters off the Eastern Pacific. So
So
that
basically, this one just like it looks different. We're splitting it. Seems
maybe
like that
I would
flies in
hope
the
that
face of
there's
what happened with
some
the red poles.
I would hope that there's some genetic work being done with this too. But apparently it's kind of like sounds like brown booby on the east in this area different than brown booby in the west because it's talking about Western North America and then Eastern.
But when you talk about things like interbreeding, that's one of the reasons that they say species get split and lumped is they either interbreed or they don't. Why would birds that are on opposite ends of the country ever be in contact with each other enough to interbreed? So it seems like this is just very arbitrary. It just seems like they're, yeah, we'll split it, I guess. So it seems a lot less scientific than I used to believe it was and
I don't
hoped
know if
that it
this is
was.
going through necessarily all of the work, if any, that went into this, like genetically. This might just be kind of a summary of, the decisions made. We'll kind of see as we go. Split of Corey's shearwater. I don't know like anything about shearwaters. Hopefully,
A lot
after
of
our
shearwater
pelagic,
stuff
we'll have
going
some
on.
shearwaters under our belt. But I do know a friend of mine posted something about, I think the with the shearwater split, it's really hard to tell them apart now. So if you had that one on your list and you don't have a picture, it'd be really hard to know which one you actually got, which I think would be a huge pain to me if I saw a species on my life list and now they're like, oh, well, it could have been this one or this one because they're different now. Like, how do you know?
Do you see the name that split of Corey Shearwater turned into to Scopoil's Shearwater?
That's got to be an eponym, right? That's got
I
to
would think
be,
so.
which I thought they were trying to get rid of.
I don't
So,
know what they're doing. The AOS seems all sorts of confused.
so it's talking about Corey's in the Atlantic, the other one in the Mediterranean, but both breed on the Spanish-administered Chafarinas Islands off the Mediterranean coast of Morocco.
Huh.
For details, see Kate Sutherland's article. Scopoli refers to Italian naturalist Giovanni Antonio. Oh, Scopoli. That's nice to have the pronunciation in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that they decided to do that.
That seems to fly in the face of the other stuff that they've been trying to do. So
Yeah, it's interesting decision.
are we just being played here?
I don't
Is
know.
this
I'm not
just
sure what's
fake?
going on. We have split of Audubon shearwater into a bunch of things. Sargasso shearwater, tropical
I
shearwater.
thought that said Banana Man's Shearwater, which would have been
Well,
awesome.
it says Bannerman's, which I'm assuming that's another eponym, right? And
I also feel like
Boyd
Persian is
shearwater.
kind of a strange name to go there, and Boyd's.
Yeah, that's interesting. Of
So they
these only
took Audubon Shearwater and split it into a bunch of eponym names.
I mean Sargasso's not. I don't think tropical
Tropical,
is.
Banana
Yeah,
Man's.
that's interesting. Split of intermediate egret, which I'm assuming
There was something called an intermediate egret.
not anymore. Now you get medium egret.
Wow. That is some really thought-provoking naming right there.
Yeah.
Plumed
Uh,
egret, medium egret, and yellow-billed egret have to be the most horrible names I've ever heard for a bird.
it's interesting. Of these three species, only medium egret, which is mostly Asian, has records in the ABA area. Why is the ABA common or the AOS? Is the AOS just an American organization?
I don't know. I would assume because it's the American
Because it's
Ornithological
interesting that they're
Society.
commenting on these birds in like other countries too. I'm assuming there's like a committee that does this. I don't know who's all on the committee. Um, I saw comments on this and I agree that this is weird. Having the hyphen and cattle egret, like Western cattle egret hyphenated.
Yeah.
That's just it. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, why do we need the population to be separate into two different species anyway?
I don't know about the cattle egrets. Most different in breeding plumage when easterns show extensive rufous. They also differ more subtly in structure.
Ah.
Hey, shout out to Midway Atoll on there, where our friend
Oh,
Zach
interesting.
is. Eastern cattle egret is an Asian Australasian species with a single record, each from Agatu in Alaska and Midway Atoll in the Hawaiian Islands. Interesting. Split of black-cap petrel into Jamaican petrel, and still one
Black
being
cap
called
petrol.
black-cap petrel. Split of lesser sand plover into Siberian and Tibetan. I really hope one population lives in Siberia and one lives in Tibet.
You know, that
That
would
would
make
make the
sense,
most
but knowing
sense.
how birds are named, I doubt it.
As it turns out, one of the two populations of lesser sand plover is more closely related to greater sand plover than it is to the other
Wow.
population of lesser sand plover. So either they all needed to be lumped or they needed to be treated as three species. Siberian and Tibetan are quite similar visually, but are subtle differences in plumage and structure. It is interesting how some of this is they look different, yet
Yeah,
with
that's
others they turn
nonsense.
to the genetics.
That's
I would
absolute
hope that there was a
nonsense.
lot of genetic work done on each of these, but I'm not sure if there is. Split of gull-billed tern into gull-billed tern and Australian tern.
Nice that Australia
Um,
gets a shout out.
So it says the two are very similar in appearance, and gull-billed tern winters in Australasia, making identification there outside boreal summertime fraught. But there are some differences. Australian tern averages paler, larger, thicker billed, and longer billed with a slightly decurved look at the bill. And then there's some vocal differences too, along with some other things. The thing that bothers me is a lot of these seem like they would be a huge pain in the field to now be like,
Yeah.
well, I have to look for these subtle differences in these species to try to pick. It reminds me of Thayer's gall when Thayer's gall existed,
I'd
and you
sort of
had to
like to know
look for
what the
like the
purpose
white
of all
under the
this is,
wings.
Derek, to be honest, because like what's the reason behind doing all this when it seems so haphazard? Because stuff is constantly getting split and lumped, and what's changing? How are they finding new information, or are they just, oh, that one's been a thing for a while we've been looking into, we'll just make the jump here. I don't
Yeah,
really
it's
understand.
interesting. I'd like some more information on it too. We got the split of barn owl. So it's American barn owl, Western barn owl, and Eastern barn owl. Plumage variation in barn owls is complex, but recent, okay, genetic and vocal analysis. That makes me feel better when they're like genetic and whatever analysis.
But how do you know it's not just an accent?
I mean, it is in some way. Only American barn owl gives the cleek cleek flight call. The other two species don't occur in the Americas. So basically, they're saying we're just gonna have American barn owl. I'm
I
kind of
guess.
sad the Latin name is changing because I always remember that Tyto alba for barn owl. Now
Too
it's
bad you don't anymore.
something else. Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't even know that was really on the radar. Split of northern flicker into northern and Guatemalan.
Okay.
So Guatemalan has rusty crown and nape. So it sounds like there's some color
Let me throw this out
differences.
here because we've talked about this a little bit. Dark-eyed Junco, why are they not split? They look drastically different depending on the region.
I mean, there's been a case, I feel like, for splitting them. I don't know why
Yeah,
you know.
yellow-eyed Junco is its own species.
I always just assumed it was a bunch of genetic stuff and
I don't know. I'm
involved with
starting to
this, but
think
we'll
that no one
see.
knows what the heck is going on anymore.
This is one that confused me. Apparently, the article says it's a long time coming, though. Split of house wren into northern house wren, southern house wren, Cozumel wren, Colinago wren, St. Lucia wren, St. Vincent wren. Oh, Grenada wren? The wrens on Grenada are their own thing now? That's
Did you just get
interesting.
an armchair lifer?
I might have, actually. Um, so it says some of the island species look and sound very different. Some sound so different that people who are intimately familiar with house wrens don't even recognize their songs as being from a wren. So that's interesting. I'm guessing we have the northern house wren then. Yeah. United States is included in northern house wrens. There's no additional species for the ABA area. Northern and southern house wrens switch over in Veracruz and Oaxaca, that's Mexico, where they look different. Warm brown. I'm gonna throw something out here. I feel like part of the AOS, the whole thing to remove eponym names was to make it easier for people to get into birding. I do feel like all these splits makes it way more complicated, even
Yes.
to people that have been in it for a while, because I mean, just being like, oh, now that's Northern House Wren, actually. I don't know. Split of Northern Wheat Ear. I don't really have any skin in the game there.
No, me neither.
Split of American Pipit into Siberian and American. I feel like this is something I've heard about, that these are different. It says American Pipit is found all over North America. As for Siberian Pipit, there are many records from where you might expect. Alaska, Hawaii, and the Pacific Northwest, but there are also records from much farther field in the Americas, California. What's the difference?
That's the
We're
question. I
quite
don't even know
similar
if
in
they are
alternate
visually different.
plumage, but Siberian seems to still show the bolder, dark flared malar patch and streaking below. Also note Americans' darker legs. The finer ID points covered in the Sibley Guide, which calls them Asian. Yeah, I think that's what I heard about, that there were actually like some difference in those pipit
Uh,
species.
how about the
Um,
Juncos that look extremely different?
so this stuff is new genuses for things. Change of genus for small bitterns. So least bittern is now in a different genus.
Snowy plover got different genus too.
Yeah. New genus for some small ringed plovers.
Wilson's plover, mountain plover.
Interesting. Change of genus for brown jay.
Huh.
Change in sequence for passenger pigeon. Passenger pigeon is moved in the checklist sequence. Now follows common wood pigeon.
What does that mean?
I think in like eBird, they're gonna move where passenger pigeon is located. Like
Because all
so.
these people are e-birding passenger pigeons.
um, well maybe I don't know what checklist necessarily is referring to. Hyphen removed from night herons.
Okay.
The rationale is that there are other things called night herons that are not the closest relative of other things called night herons. Yeah, this is. confusing.
I like how after that says a well-intentioned, but in the author's opinion, misguided and unnecessarily confusing change, which I 100% agree.
Yeah, that seems weird. That and the cattle egret thing, I think, are odd. Some of these I don't really understand why they found the need to do this.
No.
So then there's more change in sequence. Bunch of stuff about non-US birds here.
Yeah, you're kind of right. What's the investment in non-US birds? And why is it the AOS's job to worry about them?
Yeah, I don't know. New genus for some ant tanagers. Some actions that they've voted down include split of green-winged teal, herring gull, sharp-shinned hawk, red-shouldered hawk, and northern rough-winged swallow. That would be interesting. I didn't even know most of those were on the board, except for herring gull, which I assumed would go through. I wonder what the rationale was for not splitting the herring gull
I
species.
don't know. It seems like it would fit right in line with a lot of the other things they're doing. Looking at this, I used to be excited when this kind of stuff would come out to see if there was any splits that would give you armchair lifers or anything. I feel as though they're just making it unnecessarily complicated, and it doesn't really seem to follow any particular rationale. It seems like it's all over the place,
So
which is kind of
it
bothersome.
says here nowadays it can be assumed that any change in taxonomy is due at least partly to analysis of new genetic data. So in most cases it's not mentioned here. So it does sound like there is a genetic basis behind most of these things, which makes me feel better about it. But yeah, it kind of is. I feel like you could split so many different things depending on how closely you want to look at it. And I guess you could probably make the case to lump things as well. I think the things that stand out to me are the red pole lump, which we kind of thought was coming at some point.
I'm sad that it's here though.
Yeah.
I thought there
It
was something cool about a hoary red pole being this really frosty looking small billed red pole.
it held off for a long time. The house wren thing caught me off guard. The barn owl thing I was surprised about. And then the cattle egret night heron hyphen thing I feel like is weird.
I feel like this whole thing just really made me angry.
Yeah, you seem like you have a very negative view of the whole thing.
I do have a negative view of the whole thing because it seems like so many unnecessary changes
I'm
with
assuming a lot of this stuff was
not as
like
much
people's
logic as I would like.
research projects, and then it was like, oh, we found out that this is actually different.
It
And
just seems like splitting hairs. I think that if you really did this enough within enough populations, you'd find genetic differences all over the country.
well, I will say in like Costa Rica, there's so many different types of wrens as it is. And now adding all these other ones that I'm assuming looked similar enough to house wren to be considered one species, I feel like it's going to get complicated. It's definitely going to
Yeah,
keep people on their toes to try to figure out what's what.
that's true. I mean, I think some people aren't even going to know what to do with this information, especially people who have seen the shearwaters that they were saying were super close.
Well, if you're not a dedicated birder who kind of is seeing this as it comes out, I don't really know how this news gets to you. Like you're looking at a house run and people are like, actually, that's a northern house run. Like when does this information hit kind of your casual backyard birding person?
That's a really good question. And it just kind of annoys me the change, with stuff adding American Northern to stuff that was at one point just goshawk, just house wren. So that those sort of changes kind of bother me. Because we were talking about this too when we talk about titling now in our videos. Do we just say Northern house wren right away? Because now we have to make a new
You
title
know,
for
there's
that.
somebody who's going to be like, actually, it's the northern house. We had people do that with cattle egret, where all of a sudden, like, cattle egret's wrong. It's western cattle egret.
Yeah, and it's like,
With how much
well,
stuff that they're change slash planning on changing, I feel like there's got to be a little bit of understanding of people aren't gonna change right
kind of
away
feels
if
like
they're
in the
gonna change it.
NFL when free agency hits, and then the next year people just swap teams like crazy, and you're like, oh, that guy's on the Chiefs now, and it's like, oh, that's a Northern House Wren now.
Oh, that Wilson's plovers in a different genus now.
It switched teams.
Yeah, yeah. What was I'm still not a fan of the American goshawk thing. I feel like
No,
it's
it
that
sounds
Northern
wrong.
goshawk sounds so cool, and I feel like for some reason American goshawk, it reminds me of American cheese. It seems like a discounted spray can version of a
It's a
Northern
discounted
goshawk.
goshawk.
It's funny how attached you can get to some of the things that you kind of grow up knowing. I don't know, it
Yeah,
feels
for
like it
sure.
almost changes your foundation of what you think will never change. Because when you grow up, you're like, this was always this, and now it's supposed to be something else.
Well, just imagine all the other stuff that they can change too, because short-eared owls are all over the world. I'm assuming those populations that are in other parts of the world don't interbreed or can't interbreed with the US version. So when are we going to get that change? You know, when are we going to get American short-eared owl? So there's, I think, no end to what you could do if you really wanted to. So it just seems kind of arbitrary when they decide to do it, how they decide to do it, what names they decide to pick. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a look at this AOS article. We can look at it together here.
While
Um,
you're doing that, why don't you give us a Wren update?
oh, on the wren house in the backyard. Well, now they're
Yeah.
a new species. They're the North American
Do you think they know?
or the Northern house wren. Absolutely not. They're doing good. I can't tell if they have 6 or 7 babies in there because it's just a pile of wrens. There were 7 eggs. We have a nest box camera in the backyard with a family of house wrens in it, and they had 7 eggs. Then the eggs hatched, but it's hard to tell if there's 6 or 7. I think if there's only 6, I think it was like an unviable egg or something because I didn't see anything happen to a baby along the way. There could very well be 7, but they're doing well. Their eyes aren't open yet, so the parents will come in and they'll make some like clicking, chattering, and then the babies raise their head and then they get fed. And it's been really cool to watch them. So I'm excited to watch them grow up even further. This looks like it's the AOS's article, the 65th supplement to the AOS checklist of North American birds. And the title is A Renaissance with Wren, WREN, for house wrens. Species and genus splits for barn owls and plovers, and lumping of red poles included in 2024. Checklist changes. The taxonomic work of the NACC is distinct from the work of the AOS pilot project, which that's the name thing where they're trying to change the eponym names.
Hmm.
A new ad hoc committee is being assembled to oversee this pilot project. Um, so this is kind of similar to the other article. So it's just kind of going through. With house wrens, it says they considered a variety of data, including genetics, song, morphology, ecology, behavior, and habitat. The habitat to me was particularly persuasive for splitting island from mainland birds. Tropical mainland populations of house wrens typically occur in villages and towns and thrive there, whereas the island populations, for the most part, occur in forests or other natural habitats. Many of the island birds are not doing well because these habitats have been destroyed or disturbed extensively. If they were the same species, they would be thriving in the towns, urban areas, and villages like their mainland counterparts, but they're not. I don't know if I like that argument of just being
No,
like
absolutely not.
they live in different places. In addition, songs differ among the island populations. Why not
I don't
treat
even
all
like
the
that
island
argument because if you go
populations?
to different places, the different species you hear do sound kind of different oftentimes. So I really don't like that at all.
It says, why not treat all the island populations as a single species rather than splitting so many? As it turns out, most island populations are not each other's closest relatives, so they should not be considered the same species. There were clearly several independent colonizations of these islands. So I don't know. I guess they're looking really closely. And I feel like this stuff could kind of change at any time where they're like, actually, we learned something new and they are more similar than we thought. But this kind of, I know in Ken Kaufman's book, Kingbird Highway, he was talking about the seaside sparrows and the other like subspecies of those, and how if they were considered full species, people would probably care more about preserving their habitat. So I wonder if that has to do with kind of any of these considerations of maybe if they're elevated to a full species, there'll be more protection for it,
Not sure.
possibly.
I don't know.
This talks about the genus split for plovers. Let's go to the red pole lump.
Oh no.
So they were considered for lumping in 2017, and it didn't pass due to a lack of genetic sampling from populations in Greenland and Iceland. So now there was a new proposal based on a study with whole genome sequencing of the different species. So that feels very genetic driven, which
But
I
didn't
find
it say
more
there was a
comfort in that.
chromosome difference though?
One chromosome difference, I believe. In inversion in one of the chromosomes, despite variation in morphology. A chromosomal inversion occurs when a part of the chromosome is detached and turned around and then reinserted. This section of the chromosome is now backwards from what it used to be, and in these birds, that inversion is responsible for the phenotypic difference. How did that happen?
I have no idea.
Significantly, presence or absence of the inversion does not affect interbreeding of the birds. There's no evidence for long-term reproductive isolation. Moreover, an addendum to the proposal summarized numerous studies purported to support assortative mating among redpolls, which as a group provided rather weak evidence, especially when considered in light of the genomic data.
How do you explain the other things than like the bill shape?
I think they're attributing that to the chromosomal inversion. The
Hmm.
section of the chromosome is now backwards, and that inversion is responsible for the phenotypic differences we see in plumage and bill size and shape.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that's, I would like to know more on how that happened. Like,
I
that
mean,
seems like a very random thing.
that seems kind of interesting. It's not just, oh, well, it's the same species. It's there's an actual difference in it that causes it to look different. Now, is there case that they don't actually interbreed together necessarily even more often than they would interbreed with common red polls?
I don't know. This just says there's no evidence for long-term reproductive isolation. So I think they're saying those genes that they have don't change if they would interbreed with each other. So like if one looks more like a hoary red pole, it could still have the same chance of mating with a common red pole versus like another hoary red pole. Let's look at the barn owls. They specifically highlight a distinctive and prominent flight call associated with mate attraction that is uttered by New World barn owls. Significantly, this call, the cleek cleek display call, does not occur in old world groups of barn owl. I would like to say, you know, we did the birding iceberg where it
Yep.
starts with like the general knowledge. We are way in the like tip of the birding iceberg, like very
Yes.
much.
Well, you mean the bottom.
Yeah, because
The
it
tip
goes
would be the
like this,
top.
right? Or does it go like this?
Oh, wait.
Because wouldn't the
That's a
more
good
broad
question.
thing would be more, well, we're in the very
We're at the end
niche
of the
stuff.
iceberg.
Yeah, we're at the end of
That's
the
it.
iceberg as far as super niche things. Like talking about when you're talking about a cleek cleek call in barn owls that does not occur in the old world group, you're very much in the niche
I think the
side of
minute we
things.
opened up this article actually and talked about lumping and splitting, we were pretty far in.
So yeah, this says the acceptance of the new proposal was due to its emphasis on vocalizations. The vocal differences in combination with the genetics indicate that the American barn owl is truly reproductively isolated from the other barn owls, not just geographically isolated from them. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff, it goes to this committee, it sounds like, and if the committee says yes, then it changes, which is kind of wild.
It
I
is.
wonder who's all on this committee.
Are you gonna make a proposal? Try and
No.
make your own armchair lifers. What is the bird that you would like to see get split, or you think makes most sense to get split and or lumped?
Well, I feel like I was all primed for the herring gull splitting. Not that
That
I
doesn't
really
really impact
wanted that
anybody other than
or
the fact
didn't
that it
want
would be
that.
American herring gull. So
I was basically told that it was a done deal, was what
who
I was
told you
told.
that?
So I can't say, but maybe a
Because they're a
gull
dirty
expert
liar?
in the United States. And it still might happen soon. We'll
It
see.
might. I gotta go back to the Juncos. I think the Juncos are so notably different based on region. You know, if you've seen Oregon Junco versus a white-winged Junco versus a slate-colored Junco, that's a pretty drastic difference.
I'm gonna look up why
What?
they haven't been split.
Why the Juncos haven't been split?
Yeah.
I'm sure it would probably be genetic material testing, or maybe just no one's cared enough to do anything about it yet. And then I still don't know how I feel about the Chihuahuan Meadowlark split either.
So this is talking about the different Juncos and why they're not. Committees of 8 to 10 highly experienced ornithologists and taxonomists make official changes in species names. For North American birds, the Committee on Classification and Nomenclature of the American Ornithologists Union, so that's the AOU, maintains the official checklist. Is this old and is it now the AOS, or is this
Oh, I don't
separate
even see a
things?
date on this.
AOU, feels like it should be the same thing. AOU checklists are updated every few years as new information on bird biology leads the committee members to either divide one species into two or more species or to group species together under one name. Changes are often made based on new information regarding the genetics of the birds, how birds communicate, or the frequency of hybridization. Some groups of birds have been split and lumped several times. For instance, dark-eyed juncos had been split into as many as 7 different species before being lumped together under one name.
Huh.
Members of the titmouse family have been split from 3 species to 5 species since 1983. So I
I'm
do kind
assuming
of
that's
feel
the
like
oak and the juniper titmouse being split.
at any time this could just go back and someone could provide new evidence, be like, actually, the Oregon Junco is different. It probably is just
Yeah.
depending on who has the time and money to do the
Yeah.
research
Probably
and
depends
then
on
kind
who
of what
really
you're
cares about
finding.
it.
Yeah, like say hypothetically we did had like a GoFundMe to do Junko research and then we had like a team of scientists work on it. You could probably make a case one way or another for keeping it the same or changing it depending on what you actually found. So it's interesting that it is just kind of a committee of 8 to 10 people. Yeah, when I click on the AOU, it's the AOS now. So
Okay.
that must have been an
I
older
wonder why they changed their name. Did someone do
article.
some genetic research on them?
Yeah, they got split. So it says the geographic area covered includes North and Central America from the North Pole to the boundary of Panama and Colombia. I don't like this is stuff that I don't know a lot about, these committees and how much jurisdiction they have and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But our like we were talking to our friends and they saw one of was it the albatross and they were trying to figure out which one now is on their list.
Which friend was
Um,
that?
Chris and Colette were talking about it.
Oh,
They had one wandering albatross and now I think it was split into like 5 different ones. So I think
good luck.
they found out that it was snowy where they saw it. But if you're in an overlap area and you don't have any pictures to go back on, I feel like that's tough then because you're like, what did I see if they're counting these as different species? Kind of makes you want to photograph everything.
No.
And now I'm curious if I saw a house run in Grenada and technically a
You got
new
to go back and
species.
check. You got to figure it out.
I do.
Well, I guess you can see if you eBirded it. That would be the easiest way.
Should we go look?
Sure, do it. I don't know how you'll figure it out.
I think if you just go to your eBird, well, you guys can look at my eBird too and we'll see
Should we
if
roast it?
anything changed.
And of course, there's a wren. Wait, who took that wren picture? Look who it is.
Matt.
Matt
Congrats, Matt, on the
Zero,
cover image.
friend of the
He is
program.
cover images all the time. He's
He
has
does.
such good photos.
Someone out there must like Matt Zero a lot.
I mean, how can you not like the photos? They're
I was gonna say,
phenomenal.
and it's me.
Hoary Red Pole still on eBird as of now.
There
Enjoy
it
it while
is.
it lasts, folks. What if this was Matt's photo too? That'd be fun.
No one.
Yeah, it's still on here. Man, I've seen more than one, haven't we?
I've only ever seen one. One definitive one.
That was the Sax-M one, right?
Saxon Bog. Yep.
Yeah, maybe it is only that one.
I
And
did
we
have
didn't even
one
put a
actually
photo of
at
it.
our mom and dad's house that I thought looked really good for Hoary Red Pole, and I sent it to Ryan Brady, and he was just like, "Oh, better just to put it as a slasher."
I mean, that's what's tough about it too. But if you got like, a dead ringer, like look at how frosty all of these are.
What a little frosty boy.
Yeah. But it's still on here as of now, so maybe it didn't take into effect on eBird yet. Although I thought Chris and Colette had things changed. Let's try one of the new ones, like Snowy Albatross. That's on there. What's the new split? Well, let's look at the Night Heron. Oh, they changed it already.
Well, but they
Because
didn't get
there's
rid of Hoary Red Pole.
let's check out they're hanging on to it. Yeah. Wait, no, cattle
No,
egret
they
should
didn't
have
do
the
anything
hyphen,
with
right?
it. They left that one
But they
alone.
changed night heron, right?
I think.
Because that was hyphenated before, right?
I think so.
Let's check out that Grenada wren.
I don't think they did
No.
anything with
Yeah,
it yet.
maybe they're kind of taking their time.
What if they just don't acknowledge it? They're just like AOS doesn't know anything.
Barn owl is still Tyto Alba.
I wonder if it's a huge pain to update all this stuff actually.
I don't know. I would be
It
curious to
really,
find
really
out.
bothers me that you've seen 5 of these and I've seen 0.
Yeah, I gotta start putting more pictures on eBird, man. I got 5 observations and 0 photos. Well, you didn't count the herd only. You didn't hear the one at Santa Margarita, but that wouldn't be very satisfying.
Right.
The one in Costa Rica was pretty cool. I gotta put more pictures on here. All right, anything else we want to look up here?
So are you going to see if you saw the run or not?
It's not on here, like a
Yeah, but you
Grenada
can still
run.
see if you reported house run in Grenada.
Okay, let's see.
Look at that little guy.
I have 109 observations of house
Apparently you
run.
do, yeah.
There's 6.04 million in eBird, dang.
You know what date you were there?
I'm just typing Grenada. I don't think I have one.
Oh, you missed out on a species.
Guess so.
Maybe you just didn't even care enough to e-bird it. Maybe you're like,
Well,
oh,
that's
it's a
the
house
thing
run.
is like I wasn't really doing a ton of eBirding and no, wait, I do have one. This
Wait,
is from
what?
Grenada.
Oh, yeah,
Grenadian
sure
by
enough.
Rex
Look at
Resorts
that.
Pond. Two.
Wow.
And a scaly naped pigeon.
You got to add a photo of it.
It was a herd only.
Oh, that's a herd only lifer. That's
That's such a
embarrassing.
random thing to put down herd only for, too.
It is.
Like to even think at the time. So I wonder if that'll change to Grenada Run. What if they're both on the island? I don't know. Yeah, this is some very technical stuff. We'll see. I'm curious to see what everybody else's thoughts are. I feel like most of the time when this stuff comes out, it's people being frustrated by it. Not a lot of times are people like, yeah, was waiting for this to happen.
I think there's some people out there that probably are like that. Like, I've been talking, Matt Young. He's probably like, I've been talking about the split for years. It's
Well,
finally
we
here.
have the ID tips common and Hori Red Bull video. Now it's
And guess
gonna
what? It's
what?
still going to be left up.
I hope that it's well, would it even be a subspecies with the genetic thing? I don't know what you
I
call
don't
that.
know, but it'll be something. I mean, it's a historical species for whatever
Yeah.
that's worth.
I don't know. It's interesting, but let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Ryan definitely not happy with the changes.
Correct. I'm not happy with change. I'm kind of
Yeah.
change averse.
Yeah, so he's not on board with any of this, but it's interesting stuff to talk about. If you have any comments, let us know. Thanks for watching this episode of the Badgerland Birding Podcast.